The last thing I clearly remember from that afternoon is sitting in the waiting room of my doctor's office, my ears starting to itch like something was crawling deep inside them. I turned to my boyfriend and asked him for something to scratch my ears with. He looked at me like I'd completely lost my mind, which honestly is a fair reaction. But then I saw his expression shift. Something in his eyes moved from confused to scared, and I said out loud, "Something's wrong." Those were the last words I spoke for quite a while. I was 16 years old, almost 17. I had just received my weekly allergy tolerance shot, the kind you go in for every week, routine as stopping for gas. I'd been doing it for years without a single problem. My brother was there with me, my boyfriend too. You have to sit and wait the required 20 minutes after the injection, just in case. Just in case of exactly what happened next. I don't remember hitting the floor. What I do remember is watching myself lying there on the linoleum from somewhere above, watching my brother completely lose it, watching the nurses grab me by my feet and drag me into the back. There was no panic from wherever I was watching, just this strange, quiet clarity. I floated upward through the building, and then I was in open space, moving through it, watching the earth and the moon shrink away like the final shot of a movie, until there was nothing around me but darkness, and then, far ahead, a light. I ended up in a place I still call the Crystal Garden. I've never found a better name for it, and I've thought about it nearly every day for 30 years. It was nighttime there, a deep, perfect sky full of stars, but the moon was wrong. Too high, positioned somewhere it just didn't belong. The ground around the garden was a sweep of impossibly white sand, and somewhere in the distance, I could see a city that looked like it had been built entirely from crystal. Everything in the garden was crystal too, the plants, the structures, every surface. Along the back wall there were these beds shaped like pagodas, lacy and intricate, like the meditation structures you'd see in India, but made of crystal. 6 or 7 of them, and no one else was there but me. I walked around for a while just looking. The silence there was something I had never experienced. Not an empty silence, a full one. And when I looked closely at any of the crystal surfaces, I noticed that every sacred symbol I had ever seen in my life was running through them in a pale purple glow, like a stream of light flowing through everything at once. Then a being appeared, a shape of swirling, amorphous light, almost like a lotus. I should have been terrified. I was 16 and alone in an impossible place. But there was no fear available to me there. The being communicated in feelings that became concepts, thoughts placed directly into my understanding without going through language. It told me I was being worked on, that my body was being repaired, and they were going to keep me company until it was ready. They showed me things. Not a full life review the way others describe, more like specific examples. They showed me who I was at that point in time, and I wasn't proud of a lot of it. I was deep in drugs and partying and completely checked out of school. I was on a road that ended badly. But they also showed me something I hadn't recognized in myself, how rigid I was, how judgmental. I thought I was smarter than most people, and I wore that like armor. They showed me, moment by moment, how my words and dismissals rippled out and hurt people in ways I'd never seen. It wasn't accusatory. There was no punishment in it. It was more like, "You're about to be an adult. It's time to see this." There was love in how they showed me, even when it was hard to receive. Then they told me something I have never forgotten. They said I was standing at a fork. Two paths. One led to the life I was on track for: marry my current boyfriend, have children, settle into something quiet and comfortable. The other was harder, more chaotic, more uncertain, but richer, more alive. And to walk it, I would have to let go of something: the possibility of ever having children. They showed me both options clearly, and I had a sense they already knew which one I'd choose. I chose the second path before they even finished describing it. I heard something like a quiet laugh from them when I said it. Yeah, we know. Then I woke up in the intensive care unit. My mother's voice reached me before anything else. I could hear her worry before I could open my eyes. I heard someone say, "She was out too long. There may be brain damage. Just be prepared for her to not be the same." I came into consciousness, intubated and connected to everything, and it was terrible. But my mind was completely there. I started signing the alphabet. I knew basic ASL, trying to ask where my brother was, where I was, what had happened. The nurses thought it was hand spasms and were about to call the doctor when my boyfriend walked in, looked at me and said, "You're all idiots. She's signing." He read every letter, then said she's fine. She's just not very good at it. Entirely true. 3 weeks after my cardiac arrest, I was on a plane to France with my school, walking miles a day, and you would never have known a thing had happened. What did change was everything inside. I left the church gradually over the years that followed. I had been Catholic my whole life, and after that experience, the rituals started ringing hollow against what I now knew to be true. So I started reading comparative religion, the Apocrypha, ancient writings, Hermetic traditions, Eastern philosophy. I talked to people from every faith I could find, trying to build a map of something I had experienced but didn't have language for yet. That searching occupied the years between my first experience and what happened when I was almost 30. I was in Mexico alone. I'd gone for abdominal surgery. That's the reality of not having insurance in this country. I was recovering, drinking protein shakes because that was all my system could handle. Something in one of those shakes triggered a reaction. Anaphylactic shock again. The same thing that had almost killed me at 16. Cardiac arrest. Different country, different hospital, same place. I didn't have a travel experience this time. No floating, no watching my body. One moment I was in a hospital bed in Mexico, and the next I was standing in the Crystal Garden. The large being was right there, and its first message to me was essentially, "You again. Why are you back?" I said I didn't know, that I was pretty sure I was supposed to be in a hospital in Mexico, and it told me, "Yes, that's where you should be, and you're going back." But this time it said, "We're going to have a real conversation about how things work." They showed me a full life review, all of it, and they showed me where I had genuinely grown since I was 16, which was gratifying in a way I can't fully describe. To have something outside yourself confirm that the effort you put in actually meant something. But they also showed me the places I was still stuck, patterns I was running without even knowing it. Then they told me something about my heart. They said that because of childhood trauma, something essential in me had been damaged. Not physically, but in a way that prevented me from truly connecting with others. They called it heart consciousness. They said until I worked through that, the energy work I'd been trying to do would stay out of reach. And they were right. I'd been working with other practitioners, and I just couldn't feel what they were feeling. Something was blocked, and I couldn't explain why. They told me to lie down on one of the crystal beds. I lay back, and two smaller beings appeared. The same quality of amorphous light as the larger one, but more elongated, maybe the size of a 5-year-old. One on each side of the bed. They climbed right up, sat beside me, and said, "Don't panic. You're safe." Then they pulled my heart out of my chest. I watched it float above me, still beating, red and real and entirely impossible. The two beings began working on it, their fingers pressing different areas, tendrils of light flowing into the tissue, and each time they touched a new spot, I felt a corresponding pull in my chest. With every touch came a wave of euphoria so complete that I have no word for it. They worked through every area that needed attention, and when they were done, my heart returned and they said, "You're not coming back here again, not until it's actually your time." I asked how we'd prevent the medical thing from happening again. They told me I'd get a diagnosis soon, that two separate issues would be found and both could be fixed. Then they said, "Go forward, use what you've learned, teach others." I woke up in Mexico already off the ventilator. I flew home 2 days later by myself. And they were right about everything. I found a neurologist who discovered a physical defect in my brain that required surgery. The minute they did the surgery, I was cured. Completely. The second issue was treated successfully as well. I found a community of energy workers I could actually feel, and everything that had been locked opened up. I've been teaching ever since. The death sense I had always carried, that quiet knowing about whether someone would survive, amplified after the second experience until I couldn't ignore it. I started doing death doula work. I sit with people who are dying. I hold hands and read out loud and explain things to families who aren't ready to hear them. And when someone lies there convinced they're going to hell, I tell them what I know from having been there. I have died before. It was easier than falling asleep. And wherever you're going, it isn't punishment. You will be understood and loved when you arrive. Sometimes people let go more peacefully when they hear that. Sometimes the fear was the only thing keeping them here. About 5 years ago, I converted to Judaism. That surprises almost everyone. But during meditation, I kept receiving fragments, symbols, phrases I'd look up that always pointed the same direction. I reached out, visited a synagogue, sat with a rabbi who told me I already thought about the world the way his tradition does. When I started studying, it just made sense all the way down. I found community and the freedom to practice the kind of esoteric, energy-based spirituality I'd been drawn to all along. I call God the unknowable sweetness. That's the best name I've ever found. Because that's what it is. This overwhelming wave of euphoria and clarity and love and safety, all woven into something you can feel completely but never explain. I believe a piece of it lives inside every one of us, inside everything that's alive. I'm 47 years old now. I have a partner I've been with most of my adult life. Someone I spotted across a stream at a Renaissance festival and knew from the instant I heard his voice. I have a best friend I've had since we were teenagers, recognized the same way. I never had children, which was the choice I made in that garden at 16, and I have never regretted it for a single day. I have degrees I wouldn't have earned, a life I couldn't have built, a city and a community that fit me in ways my quiet hometown never could. I'm also still scientifically minded enough to wonder, on certain days, whether any of it was real, whether it was just what a dying brain produces to protect itself from the end. I can hold that question without it taking the meaning away, because whatever those experiences were, whatever that garden was made of, Whatever love held me while my body was being repaired, it operated on me like reality. It changed me the way only something real can change a person. I was once told that the crystal garden is where my soul feels most comfortable to rest. That when I actually die, when it's really my time, I'll spend some quiet time there before I move on. When I was younger, that sounded like punishment, like purgatory. Now it sounds like a gift. Time to sit alone with everything. To feel grateful for a strange, chaotic, beautiful life. To say goodbye to it and let it go with love. I'm not afraid of that. I haven't been afraid since I was 16, and something in me, even on the floor of a doctor's office, already understood. This is not the end. Life is love. That's the simplest way I know to say it. Every person you meet carries a piece of the divine, the same piece that lives in you. Even the frightened ones, the ones acting out of anger and pain, they're carrying it too. When you can look at a difficult person and see fear underneath the behavior instead of evil, the world stops being something to brace against. It took me 30 years to really learn that, but I got there. And I think that's exactly what I was sent back to do.